Hi there. My name is Caleb Hansen. I am an instructor down here at SCC. I teach CUL110, which is an introduction to culinary arts. And today we're going to be going over some basic knife skills. And in the following videos to come, just kind of give you a quick rundown of what we do here and what we do at SCC in our introductory courses, so that by the time you get here, you can be all caught up and ready to go. All right, so couple of quick things that we're going to go over. For this first video, we're going to go over our terminology, safety, and communication when it comes to handling knives. I'll just teach you the proper holding and use techniques, organization of your station, and then just a quick few basic knife cuts to get you started. All right? So, first of all, our French knife. Our French knife is going to be the most used knife in our knife kit. This is an 8-inch French knife. They come in 10, 12, on up to very large French knives, but most common is 8 to 10 inches. We have just a couple of terms that you may not be used to when using a knife. Of course, everybody knows the blade is this metal part here. The bottom edge of it, or the sharp edge, is what we call the cutting edge. The tip of the knife, self-explanatory, but then we've also got a couple of body parts that we associate with our knives when we use them. The heel of the knife is down here towards the handle, and then we also have the spine of our knife, or the back. Okay. So whenever I refer to the heel, the tip, or the spine, those are the areas that I'm talking about. Of course, we have the handle on your knife, as well as the bolster, which is this thicker metal part between the blade and the handle. All right. Of course, we have different knives that we use. COVID-19, love to deal with the mask, but it likes to fall down on my face, so I apologize. A couple different knives, though. French knife, we're also going to be using our paring knife today. Paring knife is a smaller knife. Sometimes it's slightly flexible, usually rigid, though, used a lot to peel or to pare the skins off of our vegetables. A couple of other quick things as well. Honing steel. This is not a sharpener. This is a honing steel. And all a honing steel does is just help bring your knife blade back straight, which we'll go over in just a little bit. We'll show you how to use these as well so that you can keep your knives in the best working condition for you. Bench scraper. Okay. The bench scrapers that we use have measurements across them. I'm not sure if you can see those or not. Inches on one side, centimeters on the other. And when we're dealing with fine knife cuts, we want to make sure that we are as close as possible to those perfect dimensions, especially when you want to showcase those. Right? We also use this for helping to move our cut product from our station to our finished cut tray, which I'll go over when we talk about our station organization. But this is going to be your best friend. We want to make sure that you have this with you at all times. Okay. So anytime we're working with knives, we want to make sure that we're working as safe as possible. One thing that I tell my students is guaranteed you are going to cut yourself at some point. It's my job to show you how to cut yourself correctly so that you do as minimal damage as possible. And part of that comes both with communication, but also with the proper holding of your knife so that you can minimize any risk to yourself and others. Whenever we're working with knives, especially around others, we want to make sure that A, they know where you are at all times, and B, you know where they are at all times. You don't want to be swinging your knife around, obviously, because that's not a safe working condition. But you also want to make sure that if you do have to move around with your knife in the hand, that you're doing it properly and in the right fashion. Okay? So anytime that we are dealing with knives and moving about the kitchen, first of all, anytime that you are around someone or you're going behind them, you always want to say sharp or sharp behind, corner sharp if you're coming around a corner with a knife. You want to make sure that you are communicating that properly and clearly and loud enough that they can hear, but you're not yelling across the kitchen either. Right? So anytime you're going behind someone, you're not going to have your knife pointed out front. Anytime you're moving with a knife, have it, and I apologize, you can't see down beside me here, but you are going to hold the blade right here. The blade is going to be away from your body. Okay, I don't know if, there you go. The cutting edge is going to be away from your body so that if you do fall, you are able to push it away from you without any risk of hurting yourself. The other, with it being down at your side, it's close to you so that you're not swinging it around. You're not walking behind someone with the possibility of hurting them as well. All right? So make sure that you communicate clearly and keep that nice close with the blade away from you so that you minimize the risk of hurting yourself or others. Now, proper holding. A lot of people, which I'm actually going to switch cameras here. Just give me just a second. I apologize. Okay. A lot of people I see, especially beginners, when they're using their knives, they have their hand out flat and they put their finger up on the spine of the knife here, right? That is one thing that you do not want to do. Whenever you're holding a knife, first thing you want to do is you want to pinch right here where the spine of the knife meets the bolster or the handle. You want to pinch with your thumb and your forefinger. And then you're going to wrap your other fingers around the knife. And it sits nicely right in the kind of crease of your hand right here. It's very comfortable. And it should be an extension of your arm. Your non-cutting hand, or the hand that you're going to be holding your product with, you do not want to ever be able to see your fingernails. If you can see your fingernails, you're going to be able to cut yourself extremely easily. So we use what's called the eagle claw method, okay? You bring them up, and your hand looks like an eagle claw, okay? When you're over top of your hand, if I get right over top, I block the camera, so I'm not going to do that for you, but I'm going to explain it, right? When you are over top, you should have the same view as what the camera has right now. You should be able to see the spine of the knife. You shouldn't be able to see either side of the blade. That means you're going to be cutting straight. But you also shouldn't be able to see your fingernails, right? That eagle claw pulls those under so that they are away from your blade, okay? Whenever you're using your knife, there's a couple of things that you want to keep in mind. Two things. First, either tip to board, meaning the tip of your knife is touching your cutting board, or tip to product, meaning the tip of your knife is touching your product. The tip of your knife should never be out here. It shouldn't be kind of halfway in between. You should never be cutting like this, okay, towards yourself, with one exception, which we'll go over here in just a second. But you should always have either the tip of your knife to your cutting board or to your product to start, or to the cutting board to start. Okay? All right. The other thing is, whenever you're cutting, your index finger right here, or your forefinger, the blade, not the cutting edge, but the side of your blade, should always be on that second knuckle. All right? In doing so, you're always going to know where your knife is and where that cutting edge is, and you will minimize the risk of cutting yourself that way as well, because you always know where that blade is. All right? All right. The next thing that we're going to talk about is your station organization and how it should always be set up. Every time that you are, whether it's mixing something, cutting, you should always have your station organized the same way, both for efficiency and for safety. So I'm going to zoom out here for just a moment so you can see the rest of my station. All right. First things first, it's kind of hard for me to do because of the angle of our cameras, but your cutting board should always be at the edge of your table, okay? What that does is it does not give you this lip that you can get dirty. It's always a sanitized surface. And then you can get right up next to it. You're close to your work and you don't have to be reaching way out, all right? The other thing that you want to keep in mind is keeping your knives and tools organized, right? The reason for this, like I said before, is both for efficiency and for safety. If you always know where your knives are, you're not going to be reaching over and cutting yourself or hitting the blade with your finger because it's in the wrong spot. Keeping them in the same spot facing your cutting board. I prefer to keep mine on the right side of my cutting board because I'm right-handed. And so it's easy for me to just pick those up right away. If you're left-handed, you may prefer to have them on your left side. As long as it's organized, or whatever works for you, that is what I suggest. All right? Your honing steel, again, you're going to use it in your the hand that you do not have your knife in, or your non-dominant hand. So I have that on the left side of my cutting board. You can also put it up top here, across the top of your cutting board. As long as it's out of your way and your station stays organized, that is the key, right? I put my bench scraper right up top here, kind of tucked under the cutting board so it doesn't go anywhere. I've got my compost bucket, and I've also got my cut tray with my product ready to go. And this is also where I'll be putting my finished product as well. All right. So let me get resituated here, zoom back in for you. You have a nice view of our cuts. All right, before I begin cutting, there's a couple things that I want to go over. As I mentioned before, that honing steel is not a sharpener, but it can help with keeping your knife sharp, right? And let me explain what that means. What happens with your knife when you're cutting it, as you're pushing down into that cutting board, you've got little tiny teeth on your knife. And as you keep pushing, they come apart little by little by little to where all of those teeth now are kind of splayed apart from each other. And that creates what feels like a dull knife. All right. With practice, you'll be able to tell the difference between a dull knife and a knife that just needs to be hit on your steel. And by hitting it on your steel, what that does is it just brings those teeth back together so they're nice and straight, and brings that back to its nice sharp edge. Okay. So when you're using a honing steel, right, there's a couple different methods. The best method is cutting towards yourself, but if you do it correctly, you're not going to ever cut yourself. All right. Hold your honing steel out at a 45-degree angle away from your body. And then you're going to hold your knife. Remember, pinch both sides. Hold the handle. And at a 45-degree angle to the steel, you're going to draw down. And you're going to do it the same number on both sides. Okay? The other way that you can do it, flip your knife over. Okay? And you're going to start at the bottom and work to the top. Still working at a 45-degree angle. Okay. Same number, both sides. You can use your thumb. You're not going to run along, but you're going to pull across the blade. And you'll be able to actually feel any dull spots or any spots you may need to put on the steel again. What you're going to feel is it's going to feel a little bit smoother. It's not going to grab your thumb quite as much. So to me, I need to hit this side a little bit more because it's grabbing my finger, meaning those teeth are kind of curved like this. So I'm going to hit this side on the steel a couple more times so that I can bring those teeth back this way. All right? Now in doing so, both edges feel exactly the same when I pull my thumb across them. They both catch my thumb exactly the same, meaning it's all the way down. It's all those teeth are brought back to a point. Okay? All right. Now, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to show you a couple of quick, easy cuts that'll be great for working with your knife to get used to holding it correctly, to be able to practice the proper technique. And then in our next video, we'll move on and we'll show you even a couple more cuts that we can do. All right? So today I'm going to show you how to do a couple different cuts with an onion. But first, I'm going to show you how to peel your onion using your paring knife, okay? Always peel into your compost bucket. And now remember, this is a sanitized, clean surface, right? So anytime you put anything other than a clean vegetable on here, you want to make sure you sanitize your cutting board. Right? So after I'm done peeling all of my produce into my compost bucket, I'm going to get a sanitizer rag and I'm going to wipe down my cutting board again to make sure that it stays nice and clean. All right? We're not contaminating our product in any way. All right. So our onion, the best way to peel an onion that I have found involves coring the top of it out. Excuse me, I'm just adjusting my camera real quick. coring the top, taking the root end off, and then you'll be able to peel all of this extra skin off the outside. All right. So in order to do that, what you're going to do is you are going to actually hold your paring knife, and you're going to, there we go, going to term is choke up on it a little bit. Okay, you're not going to be holding onto the handle. You're actually going to come up. See if I can do this. Whoop, there we go. Okay, you see how the spine of that is sitting right in my first knuckle right there? Okay, that's going to be where all of my control comes from, right? And you can kind of see my, there you go. I've got the rest of my knife down here in my fingers. I have that first knuckle is what I'm going to be using to control that knife. And all I'm going to do is I am going to plunge my knife in at a little bit of an angle. And I'm not pulling on the knife. I'm going to spin the onion. Okay? And that's going to take that top core out. All right? You can see in here. All that does is that just separates the layer if there's any little bit of stem down in there. It's going to get that out, so it's a nice clean start for you. Then we're going to switch over to the bottom, and same thing, I'm going to choke up on my knife. Except this time I'm going to go flat right across. Okay. And I'm going to spin the onion. I'm not pulling the knife into me. I'm spinning the onion around the blade. Okay. And you can see we're not taking very much off. It's just barely taking that root end off. We want to leave this portion of the root attached so that it holds our onion together. Whoops, excuse me, this portion here. So that it holds our onion together while we're cutting it. From there, you're going to use your paring knife. You're going to slip the cutting edge of the knife under the peel, put your thumb right on it, and you're going to roll away from the onion, right? And that's going to pull the peel off with it. Okay. There is more than one way to peel an onion, obviously. Once you get good at it, this will be the most efficient, as well as the cleanest way to do that, because you save all of this extra product here. You don't have any extra cuts that you have to deal with, and you have a nice, clean onion. All right. One more time. Starting with the stem end, you're going to plunge in at about a 45 to 30 degree angle. You're going to rotate the onion. Okay. Pull that core out. You're going to barely go under that root, spinning the onion again, and then using the paring knife, you're going to peel that outside layer of skin off. All right? Just like that. Okay? And remember, like I said, we want to keep this nice and clean. Okay? So picking up all that excess skin that's around me here, putting it into the compost bin. My onions are ready to go on the cut tray. Now I'm going to go ahead and sanitize my work area again. And lastly, I'm going to take my knife. I'm going to sanitize it as well because that was cutting through the skin that could or may be contaminated. Okay? Now, one thing that I did not go over is under your cutting board, you don't want your cutting board to slip around when you're working with it. You want to make sure that it stays in place, right? So there's a couple things we can use. I prefer just to use a wet paper towel because it's cheap, it's quick, it's easy. You've got them available in the kitchen. You can also use the liners that you can use in the bottom of, say, your silverware drawer, your junk drawer. Okay, it's just this rubber mesh liner. You get them at Walmart. You get a roll of it. Throw a chunk of that in your knife kit. Goes right under your bag and keeps it from slipping around. Or excuse me, right under your cutting board. Okay? But main thing is you want to make sure that your cutting board stays in place whenever you are cutting on it. All right, let's cut an onion. First things first, you got this round onion. I apologize, white cutting board, onion, a little hard to see. But you've got a round onion. You don't have really a flat surface to work with, so we're going to start with that flat surface. Using your knife, again, remember, tip to product or tip to board, you're going to slice all the way through and cut that onion in half, right? You're going to put one half up to the top because we're going to work with that in a little bit. Second half, go right in the middle of your cutting board, right? Towards the bottom here. Imagine an X through your cutting board from corner to corner, and that's going to be what we're cutting on. Your product is going to be lined up from your left-hand corner to the top right. Unless you're left-handed, it'll be opposite. Your knife, you're always going to be using from that bottom right to the top left, all right? And what that does is it's going to keep you centered. It's going to give you a nice, clean, straight cut every time and help you with your fine knife cuts especially. All right, so now that we've got this onion in half, first cut that we're going to learn how to do is we're just going to learn how to dice this onion, all right? So you're going to spin the onion so that the stem end is facing your knife, and you're going to do a couple of plunge cuts, okay? First thing you're going to do is you're going to slightly rotate your knife so it's at a little bit of an angle, and you're going to start on this one side over here. Okay, you're not going to go all the way through the knife, or all the way through the onion. You're going to just make a small cut, keeping that root end intact, working all the way around. Okay, you see I'm not going all the way through the onion. There's just a little bit of this root end down here that's keeping this intact. And I'm plunging in and pulling back. And then as you get to the other side, you're going to slightly rotate around. Okay, and what that does is you've got all these layers of the onion in here, okay? If you were just to cut straight down, you'd end up with a large chunk of onion here. Instead, by rotating your knife slightly and coming around, you cut apart those layers so that you end up with nice, clean dice, okay? So now that you've done those plunge cuts, you're going to rotate your onion 90 degrees again. You're going to, using that eagle claw, right, you're going to start with your knife right here at the stem end, not the root end. You want to leave that root end intact as long as possible, okay? You're going to run your knife through. Remember, tip to product, tip to board. If you're uncomfortable starting up here, you can certainly put the tip of your knife on the cutting board. And let your knife do the work, all right? If you are having to push your knife through your product, you are not letting the knife do the work, right? Chef knives are designed, they've got this little curve right here, okay? So whether you start up here with the tip to the product or if you start on the board, you're always going to be slicing through the product, right? You're not going to be pushing down. You want your knife to slide forward a little bit every time so that you're slicing through and using that cutting edge to its full potential. Okay. Once you have gotten down to this end here, you're going to do the same thing. Continue to slice. You can see I've stopped right before that root. Okay. Spin. Again, stop right before the root. Skip over and go back. Okay. Now all of the waste that you have was the core of the onion in the beginning and this tiny little root piece. Okay. The rest of the onion is all usable product that's a nice even dice, okay? Now if I zoom in here, you'll see as I break these up, okay, they're all equal-sized pieces, right? They're not all of them are going to be the same shape. You're not looking for a fine cut on these. The biggest thing is you want to have equal, consistent pieces. So if you're cooking these, they're all going to cook the same and have the same end result. All right? So diced onion, very easy. Zoom out here again. Okay, transferring to my finished products, transferring to my cut tray, right? I'm just going to very gently wipe any excess product off my blade using my bench scraper. All right, and now my cutting board and work surface is all clean and ready to go for the next part of this onion. Okay, I'm going to show you how to do that dice again one more time. I'm going to switch to this view here so you can see me rotate around the onion with those cuts. I'll zoom in a little bit. Whoop. All right. Okay. So again, working at those 45-degree angles from corner to corner of that board. I'm going to start with the stem end facing my knife, right? And rotate all the way around the onion, doing those nice lines in there. Plunge cuts, okay? Right? Now you can see if I pull these apart a little bit, I've got even pieces all the way around, right? And keeping that knife on that first knuckle kind of helps you gauge those the size of those plunge cuts as well, so that you are able to have a nice consistent cut in the end. All right? So now I'm going to rotate this again. Okay. All right. Grab my bench scraper. All right. All right. Now I have an entire onion that is nice and consistent, same size all the way around. Okay. Now with this next onion, I'm going to show you two different cuts. With the first half, I'm going to show you pretty much what I just showed you right here, with one exception. We're going to be mincing it instead of dicing it, which simply means that we are going to reduce the size of those cuts so that instead of this nice dice size, you're going to have very small minced onion. All right. The best way that I think to describe it to my students, because everybody knows McDonald's, right? The onions that are on top of those burgers are minced onion. All right. So nice small pieces. Again, slice the onion in half. One half's going to go up here for later. And with this one, we're going to do the same process, except we're going to try and get as many plunge cuts in here as we possibly can all the way around the onion. Okay, adjust my grip slightly. Okay, now you see I've got all these tiny little cuts all the way through here. Okay, same thing. We're going to use that eagle claw. We're going to kind of use our 2 fingers to push the onion together a little bit. And then as many cuts as we can get through this way. Okay. Down to this end. And then again, as many cuts as we can get, stopping just before that root. Okay, tiny little root piece is all that we're ending up with waste. Right. Now, with a mince, you have a little bit more inconsistency in size, right? So to fix that and to break these up a little bit more, you're going to gather this into a nice pile, keeping the tip to the board. Put your hand on the spine of your knife, keeping that pinch grip. You're going to rock your knife through one way, and then the other. Okay? All that does is that just breaks up those pieces so you have a nice, consistent minced onion. All right? Transfer that to my cut tray. All right. Now, for this last half of the onion and the final cut in this video, we're going to do what's called a French cut. Okay? I'm going to switch to this view so you can see a little bit better. Instead of starting at the stem end, which we've already got cored out, I'm going to start at the root end. Okay? A French cut, you're going to have all these nice, almost strips of onion that are all going to be even sized. And in order for those to come apart, we've got to take this root end out first. All right? So you're going to hold onto your onion, still using the eagle claw, and you're going to angle your knife both down like this, as well as not straight on, but you're going to do 45. Okay, so 45 and 45. It's a little bit awkward, I know, but you're going to do that on both sides, and you'll see why in a minute. Okay, you see how it tapers up? Okay, tapers up this way, and then it's just barely taken that root out, and it's disconnecting all those inner layers. Okay? Once you have that done, doesn't matter which end you start on, but you're going to start with that tip to your product, and you're going to do the same thing as you would if you're doing the plunge cuts, except with one exception. You're going to end up going all the way through the onion this time. Okay? You're going to rotate all the way up till your knife is straight up and down. Okay? And instead of continuing over this way, you're going to rotate your onion, right? So that you have that nice, comfortable grip all the way around. All right? And now what you have with all those is you have all these nice, even pieces called a French or a radial cut onion, right? And they're all separate. Okay, none of them are connected. They're all individual little julienne pieces of onion. All right? So, once again, right? Our couple cuts here, we have our diced onion, we have our minced onion, which is the nice small version of the dice, and then we have our radial cut. These are the three most common cuts of onion that you will use in pretty much any recipe or any kitchen, restaurant, or home. And if you can master these three, you can master pretty much any cut, being able to hold your knife properly, right? Okay, just a recap on the knife. Grab, pinch right here where the blade meets the bolster. You're going to wrap your fingers around, right? That gives you a nice firm grip no matter what. You got a couple of parts of your knife you got to remember, no matter what. You've got your heel, the tip, and the spine, right? You've got your blade, and you've got the cutting edge, which is the actual sharp portion of that. All right? So, like I said, if you can master these onion cuts, you'll be on the road to do pretty much every fine knife cut that there is, which we'll start getting into in the following videos. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you'll have fun. Remember, practice safe cuts. Make sure that you know where your knife is at all times. And if you're walking behind anybody, please communicate what that is. All right? Sharp behind sharp. Again, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.